versus
all
the real
time, and it's
Madara.
really
He
awkward
dies.
because they
He's just
forget to
dead.
subscribe, so try not to make that mistake yourself. Minato Namikaze is a shinobi described as having a natural-born talent like a shining glint, only being rivaled by characters like Itachi Uchiha, who became a Jinchuriki slaying a Katsuki member anywhere debatably between 12 and 14, depending on who you ask, and Gaara, who became Kazekage before Naruto even finished training with Jiraiya to learn the giant Rasengan, despite being near in age. Minato also slayed thousands of rock shinobi almost single-handedly and pretty much won the third Great Ninja War for the Leaf side of things, only ever repeatedly fighting foes like Unruly A, the son of the third Raikage, and the perfect Jinchuriki, the Hachibi, Killer B, and possibly all the others they could have had in their platoons from time to time. Maybe even Arui or C could have been involved, we're not too sure. This earned Minato the namesake the Yellow Flash, and would be praised by all other ninja as being the greatest in godlike speed, even compared to a somewhat younger third Hokage who was nearing the end of his God of Shinobi era, all of the Sannin, Hanzo in his prime, the third Raikage, Kakuzu, Sasori, the Yahoko era Akatsuki, Fugaku Uchiha, a much younger Chiyo, Anoki, and the list honestly goes on and on. It got so bad with Minato pretty much solo stomping the Rock Village that Anoki didn't really know how to respond, and this dominance in Orochimaru's strange descent into madness is what would allow Minato to become the fourth Hokage. Now, while the Uchiha being manipulated by Obito on the sidelines didn't like Minato being chosen over Fugaku, the rest of the ninja world kind of understood why he was put there and respected the decision. However, Minato had many failures, and those would come back to haunt him when Obito alongside the Nine Tails would attack Konoha. Now, while Minato could have actually survived the Nine Tails attack on Konoha, this would result in the loss of the Nine Tails, and the Bijou balance would be destroyed, and the motherly message he wanted Naruto to hear from Kushina, so he sacrificed himself. He wasn't technically defeated by the Nine Tails attack.
He just chose to lose.
Rather exhausted from teleporting the Nine Tails around its Bijou bombs and then defeating Obito. And this entire situation, as I said earlier, is presented as a sacrifice, not really a defeat, in which Minato claims that his family is shinobi and that is their duty to do things like that. Despite Kushina claiming that sealing the Nine Tails away is possible without him dying, I outlined more of this in my Minato is underrated video, which a lot of you seem to enjoy, and I recommend to those who haven't seen it. Here, however, we have to analyze whether or not Minato would have this same ability against the actual Madara Uchiha, and whether Obito was just so hacks that he could somewhat stall out Minato, or if Madara is such a powerhouse that hacks abilities don't even matter. While we went over Minato's lore, we have to go over some of his actual scaling. Minato is often presented as a very high Kage level combatant, and tends to be the gauge that Naruto is compared to throughout the series. An example, when Naruto completed the Rasen Shuriken, it is intended to be a jutsu that even Minato couldn't complete. Now, while Minato doesn't have Naruto's insane ability to spam clones due to his chakra and died pretty prematurely, this isn't really a focus. The focus here is that the Rasen Shuriken that took down Kakuzu's lives in his transformed state, in which Kakuzu thought was an insane power that he shouldn't even let touch him, claiming it was fitting of the Nine Tails Jinchuriki because it's the strongest tailed beast. This is led up by Naruto wanting to defeat Kakuzu solo, not only to prove he can surpass the fourth Hokage like Kakashi said, but also to ease his insecurity about his inferiority to Sasuke, who he still is comparing himself to. In manga volume 39, it's actually stated, while the threat of the criminal organization known as the Akatsuki looms over present, Naruto's former classmates Shikamaru, Choji, and Ino embark on a mission to find Captain Asuma's killer, and when their quest brings them into conflict with Kakuzu, one of the Akatsuki's deadliest members, it's Naruto who takes the enemy down with a display of power that rivals even the fourth Hokage himself. Meaning that this power is something that rivals Minato's. If we say that Minato can output around as much power as Naruto's incomplete Rasen Shuriken that can shred apart Kakuzu, then we can somewhat get a scale, as obviously we know that Kakuzu was able to take on perfect Jinchuriki of the Two Tails Yugito in her complete tailed beast state.
Where are all the squids? What the fuck? Am I gonna get scammed tonight?
The weakest member of the Akatsuki, implying that Kakuzu did most of the heavy lifting, as well as Kakuzu blatantly getting attacked and tagged by Yugito on panel, and actually finishing the battle many hours later without so much as really a scratch or any hearts lost. Yet, Naruto's Rasen Shuriken that rivals the power of the fourth Hokage shreds him apart. This is consistent in all actuality, as we know that even with just a kunai, let alone a jutsu, a younger Minato that probably wasn't even in his prime quite yet was able to cut through the perfect Jinchuriki of the Eight Tails and his partial transformations with just said kunai, and arguably a young unruly A who could fight the full Eight Tails and chop apart its horns, let alone Minato's full power with a Rasengan. Killer Bee's partial transformations being able to catch small Biju bombs from Kurama and should actually scale and be relative to his full self like limbs, and it puts this in a considerable tier. You could argue that this technique and level of power is more so something that represents Naruto's ability to reach Minato's levels of talents. However, this seems like a lot of linguistic gymnastics. But even if you did, the Eight Tails and A feats still remain. This is once
Hey, there's the
solidified by
squids.
the fourth Raikage thinking that he was convinced nobody could actually have defeated Minato, which would of course
Come here, Squiddy.
be who fought him many times, as stated in the data books and even shown on panel. There's also one thing I want to bring up when we talk about Minato, which is something presented in the Naruto Storm
That's right, come on, little boy.
game.
I have candy.
This is a video game. There's a very interesting
Ooh.
statement interview with CyberConnect 2 about the game's story mode that I'm going to quote here. In quote, Naruto and Sasuke will obviously have the biggest arcs, but the game will also allow players to experience the backstories of others such as Minato Namikaze and Itachi Uchiha. In particular, the developers and animation studios have worked very closely together to create new content that will be considered canon, which adds up around 60 minutes of additional anime content. End quote. And this would include stuff like Itachi versus Kisame and Minato dodging base Naruto.
Can he not, like, get over here?
Zero chakra. The same base Naruto can fend off fatigue, Tendo pain momentarily. And another interesting concept brought up in the game is the possibility of Minato having actually sparred with Hiruzen and Jiraiya before becoming Hokage. And then
How dare you
them
touch me.
both. Although it's somewhat implied Hiruzen and Jiraiya could have been holding back in Minato's opinion, but this could
Don't
just
you
be
touch me,
Minato
human.
ability as well. This is also not in the anime cutscenes of the game, which are what are stated to be worked on as canon. And yes, anime canon is a big deal, as obviously we know that Kishimoto put things
No,
in the
stay
Naruto
back.
manga intentionally to feed into the anime. It was all worked on closely together, such as Sakura's love letter and so on. I just thought I'd touch up on this here rather than later. I don't think it's too important.
Yes, the
for
squids are
scaling,
spawning.
but
I think I just had to be
consider,
far enough
you know,
away.
Maybe you think Minato destroyed Hiruzen and this game has some canon content in it and somehow they link. Maybe it matters, but it seems a little bit like a stretch to me, so I'm not going to be using too much of it. So in terms of speed, we know Jonin Minato can blitz around Jonin A by a considerable margin, and Naruto's ability to react to the fourth Raikage was considered somewhat like a yellow flash feat. Even the second and third Hokages recognized Minato's speed in the war as phenomenal, and he's able to react and teleport away at 10 Tails Biju Dama and teleport at a long distance away. He's also able to react to the full 9 Tails and is generally considered uncontested when it comes to speed. With this, you can kind of gather that Minato lore-wise is considered a step above perfect Jinchuriki for the most part. He's generally considered to be stronger or
Nice. Good boy.
members individually, although there may be some debatable exceptions like Itachi and so on. He is not at all impressed with Pain in comparison to the threat of Obito coming back in the future, who he already defeated, despite the fact that in the original weekly run of the manga, Pain was actually stated to be the strongest man in the Akatsuki, at least in terms of raw power. If you think someone can defeat Pain with like hacks or something else, then sure, but in terms of raw power, they state Pain is the strongest, and Minato thought he wasn't as big as a threat as Obito and merely a puppet. Now, whether this is because Obito is insanely fast, or he's insanely hacked, or he can summon and control the 9 Tails, might be a factor here, rather than just his base, punching power, but regardless, that's generally where Minato scales. Minato also has many other abilities that sort of raises his tier astronomically, which I will go over later. Madara, on the other hand, kind of just scoffs at the idea of Biju and Kage entirely, and is kind of his own animal. We'll be talking about a live Madara that fought Hashirama in the past, and regardless of whether you think a live Madara is stronger than his Edo counterpart, it's not really all too necessary.
No, live Madara is definitely stronger.
Both should be kind of capable of performing their own feats, like, for instance, scaling to the 9 Tails, you should be able to output as much energy as summoning meteors. that has actually been calced before, so it's not really too big of a deal, but Madara already stated that his battle with the 5 Kage was nothing in comparison to his fight with Hashirama, and pretty much no diff them with his Susanoo, destroying A, Tsunade, Anoki, Gaara, and Mei like nothing, despite Team Go, you know? He also faced off against Hashirama. Hashirama was able to face Madara's perfect Susanoo and the complete 9 Tails single-handedly and win. A character who Madara and even Kabuto were convinced nobody could ever compete with, and Kabuto thought that no one alive could actually contest Madara except for Hashirama. So there's some interesting statements there when it comes to power scaling. A lot of people try to make a large contrast between Hashirama and Madara due to this. However, their powers are far closer than you probably think, as we know that Madara amped the 9 Tails to be able to fight Sage Hashirama with his majestic attire Susanoo, Sage Mode having a massive increase of power to increase the user on its own, and giving the 9 Tails the ability to actually rip off almost all of the arms of his Sage Buddha statue. For those that don't know, Sage Mode is sometimes compared to being greater than Curse Mark 2's amp, which is like over 10 times greater. I've seen many arguments. I've seen some people compare it to Naruto fighting his 4-tailed self in power, and Kakashi says like it's over like 25 times the chakra difference. So I've seen a lot of arguments for Sage Mode, but in this case you can just say, okay, he fought in the amp Hashirama, so we don't have to get too headcanon-y. Even after the 9 Tails was subdued, Hashirama was also still in Sage Mode, which is what people forget, meaning he was still beyond his base power in their fight, yet Madara was able to push Hashirama to such an extreme that Hashirama could do nothing but collapse from exhaustion after their battle was completed. Even then, some argue that Madara might have actually been on equal terms, having only been caught off guard by Hashirama's Wood Clone. There's another argument that Hashirama didn't actually want to kill Madara until the very end, kind of like as Naruto and Sasuke's battle. However, it still can't be denied that Madara is still in the same weight class, that weight class being above Kyuubi level. This is very easily demonstrated even during the War Arc, when Madara is brought back to life and Hashirama says he's regaining his past powers. Even while blind, he shreds apart Sage Naruto and EMS Sasuke with absolutely no difficulty. And even as a heavily suppressed Edo Tensei, without even using Susanoo, he casually can fight off Naruto numerous times. EMS Sasuke, who with a Senjutsu amp was just fighting 10 Tails Obito and keeping track of his movements with his Sharingan also, mind you. So obviously in terms of power, Minato is quite literally nothing on Madara. The comparison is completely obsolete. In fact, looking at his fight with Obito, where Obito survived the Rasengan directly to his body while only around 14, it might actually be arguable that Minato would have extreme difficulties even damaging Madara whatsoever, if not at all. Because obviously, perfect Insurity level is nothing to Kyuubi plus, because half the Kyuubi can kind of poop on all of the Bijuu at the same time, pretty much. So obviously, it's not very comparable, especially considering an imperfect Rasen Shuriken was considered Minato's level of power, and then later on we see Sage Naruto almost doubled his strength as confirmed in the data books, and these Rasen Shuriken don't even cause Madara or Edo to flinch while he's suppressed by Hashirama's deity gates and even sealed away and can't use his Renegon abilities. So now while Minato is no slouch in terms of scaling, as he faces off against Zetsu Obito, who's a beast in his own right, and Black Zetsu is actually scared of him, but compared to people beyond the full 9 Tails, this is a rather obsolete comparison, with Black Zetsu Obito at best scaling to around EMS Sasuke, who thought Naruto controlling half the 9 Tails powers was an astronomical feat and gave him insecurity, let alone the full thing, plus Madara and so forth. So in this case, you can almost consider the perfect Susanoo of Madara's to rival the full 9 Tails, possibly higher. Then alongside the actual 9 Tails, Madara's packing over 4 times the firepower Kyuubi Chakra mode Naruto has, with only his half 9 Tails, and then plus himself, who is dwarfed by Kurama's, as actually shown in the manga, so bare minimum. So there's no feasible scaling opportunity for Minato. The only thing left that he has is his speed and his hacks abilities. Minato's speed is a very contentious thing, surprisingly, mainly because there's a data book guide that says he is as fast as the 4th Raikage at full speed. So this argument at first seems kind of like a joke, but it's somewhat strong when you consider the following. 1. Naruto is supposed to be surpassing the 4th Hokage throughout the series of rivaling him with his progressions. This is supposed to be his speed progression by blitzing the 4th Raikage, in a similar sense that his Rasen Shuriken was his power progression. 2. The Raikage actually trains, so just because Minato could blitz him when they were younger, doesn't mean the same logic or feats would apply when Minato dies and the Raikage gets to train for free in the meantime. 3. The Raikage's speed is only ever surpassed by Kyuubi Chakra Naruto, who has no anti-feats when at full power, such as being able to handle suppressed Edo Madara and Obito for long periods of of time while simultaneously protecting the entire Shinobi Alliance. So if the Raikage was actually as fast as Minato, it almost wouldn't be inconsistent with much. However, I've also heard counters say Minato simply has Raikage-like combat speed and possibly has way greater reaction speed that uses in conjunction with his Flying Raijin or say his Shunshin, such as when he helped against Ten Tails Madara later in the war. The only problem with Minato helping against Ten Tails Madara, though, is that it seems like Madara's truth-seeking orbs are consistently countered by lesser members of the cast when they're thrown out, and don't seem to be relative to his true max speed, as even non-8-gauge Guy could react to them somewhat previously, yet Madara can still react to some attacks from the complete 8-gauge Guy who is far faster later. There's also the point that Minato teleported between Madara and Guy for a moment, which, while I think is a great speed feat, is still somewhat relegated by the fact that Guy intentionally leaped forward on command for the strategy and was skipping through the air rather than moving normally. So the counter argument would be that Guy's air skips are simply nowhere near his normal movement speed, rather than Minato is 8-gauge Guy level of speed. Now, I'm not saying these are my arguments or that I agree or disagree. I want to say flat out that it probably doesn't matter too much to our discussion, and I'll explain. The reason it doesn't really matter is because Minato's only offensive ability against Madara is with his Sealing Jutsu that can seal away a complete Nine Tails level opponent at the cost of his life. Whatever Sealing Jutsu he has in his arsenal that might be Nine Tails level as well. As his attack potency might potentially even be too weak to even damage non-Susanoo Madara that could clash with Hashirama, could take complete Super Rasen Shurikens from Sage Naruto, take out EMS Sasuke and Naruto and so on, let alone his actual full power. This is also negating his Edo Tensei feats a bit, which in all actuality do scale to his alive powers. In this case, Minato would have to remove the contract seal from the Nine Tails with Madara, so let's go over a few win conditions and losing conditions for Madara. So, win condition number 1, simply overpower and...
Yeah, there's no way that Madara loses to Minato, dude. Holy shit.
Condition for Madara 2, the Majestic Attire Susanoo. If this happens, it's an instant lose. There is no debate or argument left to be had. Like, the only way Minato wins is if he prevents this from happening, which not only does Minato have literally nothing to damage the Susanoo, we know that he doesn't have the power to seal away such a vast chakra volume anyway without serious risk. So he can't really do anything to stop Madara from just obliterating the Leaf Village or chasing Minato down until he runs out of stamina. Even if Hiruzen came to help and they 2v1 this, they'd still get pretty much no diff, as Hiruzen could barely handle stalling the base Nine Tails, let alone defeating it with Madara. You also might be able to argue that Minato might be able to create flying Raijin barriers to teleport Biju bombs. However, the problem with Madara's QB Susanoo is that he can spam Biju bombs like a machine gun. Like, I'm not even joking. This was shown on panel. He shoots so many Biju bombs that they almost rival the amount of hands on Hashirama's Buddha statue. So Minato would have a very hard time teleporting all of that. Win condition for Minato 1. Minato, with his hypothetical fan-powered 8-gauge Guy level of speed, instant Reaper Death Seals or Nine Tails Seals Madara somehow, which even Minato seems to disagree with the ability to do, and then either seals Kurama back into Kushina or dies like he did before. Basically, the win condition for Minato seems like a lot of fan-happy biases that aren't very supported by any of the material in the series, unfortunately. In my personal opinion, I'd say that the gap is just too massive in terms of power. That Madara would just easily destroy the Leaf, and at worst, he'd have to tire out Minato or catch him by surprise, which, considering even Obito could do and react to him numerous times, it doesn't seem like Minato would ever really get away with anything, especially since we know Obito, even with a Renegon, has been tagged, let alone Kid Obito, who Minato got shook by. Basically, while debates like Minato versus Itachi, Minato versus Pain, can Minato beat Kisame, can Minato beat up Takazu, while those seem kind of interesting, the interesting debate for Madara is, can Madara defeat the entire Akatsuki? So you can kind of see where the gap kind of comes in. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear
Madara steamrolls the Akatsuki. If he has Majestic Attire Susanoo Kurama, dude, he kicks our ass. There's just no shot. Fuck.
Of course, I actually am a huge Minato supporter, and there's a lot more stuff in that video that you can learn, such as the Golden Boy era and how he has actually nerfed during the war arc considerably. So, also in Storm Generations, as I said before, Madara is also shown, and the infamous time reversal Madara Mangekyo ability is actually in the Generations cutscenes, which are stated to be canon. So while this is Obito's actual interpretation of the story as he's telling it, it's kind of interesting because that means that Obito thinks that Madara might be able to like rewind time for a few seconds in battle. So that's also something to heavily consider in this matchup. I just thought it was a funny detail that thing of all things might actually be canon to the Naruto anime. So other than that, guys, till next time.
Video, I'd like to mention today's sponsor, which you can use in real life, by the way, and that is Display. Most of us like our
Oh god. Fucking Displate, dude.
The best items you can use to add some style to your room or maybe your office is Display. Now, what is a Display? A Display is a high-quality, one-of-a-kind metal poster designed with amazing art and different passions. For example, there are many designs, not just designs, but even with brands.
Can you put anime titties on it though?
Characters appear. I really like
Probably.
ones, this Souls fired one by Body Vidya, and even this duck.
Okay, it's nighttime, cool. Did my stuff get done? Okay. It's just like one away, whatever.
You know how it sometimes takes ages to put something on the wall and ages trying to clear it up, but with this blade it only takes about 20 seconds to set up with no tools, and I did it myself, and it actually is, you just slap it on the wall basically, and there's no problem at all. No damage, and overall not stressful. It's super durable as well. Also, as I said, Display is a good alternative to standard alone paper or canvas printing. It's even cheaper when you use the top link in the description using discount codes, which is 1 to 2 displays for 22% off, or 3 or more displays are 33% off. So enjoy your high quality posters with Display. They were very generous with the sponsorship, so if you would, please, look into it and actually see if there's something you'd enjoy, or even make your own display for that matter. Look in the description below. Thank you. But just to show you guys that this isn't just like some random Akatsuki versus Akatsuki matchup, I wanted to kind of explain that Akatsuki and Pain, they're sort of like the middle volume main antags or end bosses.
This thing is beautiful. It took so long, but it's finally done. It's just beautiful, dude.
Yeah, it's what brings them to like a higher level. And Itachi and Pain are also the only shinobi in the third data book, which was, kind of supervised by Kishimoto a bit, or at least he read them. They're the only shinobi that are considered like divine level shinobi, whereas Itachi has the divine Susanoo entity around him, as well as, Tsukuyomi, the ability to control all time, space, and the mental world. And then he has the Amaterasu, which is like the strongest attack on the physical world. They're all named after deities. And he also has the Totsuka Blade, which can pierce anything, and the Yada Mirror, which can deflect anything. And these are all described as divine level shinobi attributes and abilities. And then Pain, on the other hand, his whole thing is being divine, and even the way.
Where are the squids, dude?
Like some mythological Pokemon or something. Like he's not even like a normal human being.
Oh god, there they are. What the hell?
Named after Samsara, Swag was saying this in the last recording, but every single one of the paths of Pain is named after a certain cycle of Samsara, even the 6 cycles, and all his abilities are sort of messing with reality, surpasses the concepts of just life and death entirely, which is like a huge.
Ew, I see more takers.
Guy over death, and Takazu, Sasori, all these characters trying to become immortal, and God trying to become immortal, or those guys trying to make him immortal to get beyond death. You have, even the Otsutsuki later in the series, they make karma to get past life and death, and then you have Pain here, whose eyes are just beyond the concept. He can just manipulate, he can revive people over and over again, and he seems to just have a whole different divine level of abilities that no one else really does.
He's also called like the child of prophecy too,
Yeah.
by Jiraiya. Before he meets Minato, Jiraiya thought that this kid was like the chosen one of the whole Naruto world.
Right, and Itachi does kind of have like...
Can I not take damage with these guys on me? Hold up.
It's mainly the novels where he's known as the Shinobi of Chaos, which is like... That's why he has the lines on his face, at least in the novels, and it's basically a Shinobi that's born like once every 100 or so years that will have like huge change.
Okay, well, looks like I'm not finding out with this freeloading piece of shit. What a fucking... how pathetic. He couldn't even damage me.
Danzo, gas him up even. But, you kind of possibly chosen ones that will change the world. Both divine shinobi, both are like beyond
Ooh.
fighters. You know, Itachi is constantly manhandling and bullying Orochimaru. Pain bullied Jiraiya, and then they have to fight him after their mentors are defeated. You know, at the end. So they're clearly supposed to be.
What
a
the
similar
fuck?
level, at least, you know, in terms
Are
of
you
skill.
invincible with
Now,
soul
once
armor?
the same strength. Well, that's what this whole video rant is gonna be kind of about.
You
I guess we're-
are?
Yeah.
What the hell?
People have been asking who would win this fight for a really long time. Pretty much. Since
I can just wear a squid now. I feel so alive.
Even while the
Hey boys, what's poppin'?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, I mean, it's like there are a whole lot of aspects. There are like a whole lot of aspects of the fight to talk about here. I think that
Interesting.
something like this, it's a lot.
That's so neat. I never knew that. You don't take damage from a squid if you have a soul helmet on.
Such vast arsenals.
Lots of interpretations too.
Yeah, they have. They're
You can't place blocks when you have them on you either. Cool.
strengths that we both think are valid that come from statements about their abilities in non-biased sources like the databugs, statements from characters in the series, and these statements can all be interpreted different ways. Like
That is hilarious that you don't take damage from squids. Is it any other armor
the
piece?
best place to start would
No, it's
be
just the
their
helmet.
opponents. So Pain does have a more impressive lineup.
Interesting.
Before,
I did not know this.
I would
That is actually very, very interesting.
Get a good grip on how strong he's supposed to be. Just using
Perfect.
Sage Naruto. I think everybody agrees that Sage Naruto is massively more powerful than Sasuke was around this point. in
What
series.
the hell?
It says so after Sasuke awakens the Mangekyo Sharingan, that Sage Naruto is substantially more powerful than him. Like, going into the 5 Kage Summit, right? So at this point, Sasuke should be able to use the Susanoo, Hikazu, Amaterasu, and Kagutsuchi, and Obito just thinks him fighting Naruto would be totally hopeless. Like, the Leaf Village is off limits, he needs to get stronger. And Pain fought this person, he also fought Jiraiya, whereas Itachi does fight Orochimaru, and beats him, like, really bad.
I guess like in his own like pseudo sage mode form, if you want to call it that. It's kind of weird. He turns into like a sage snake, but it's not sage mode.
Yeah.
So it's complicated, but yeah.
Yeah, and he fights Kakashi and Sasuke, so Pain, again, like I said, has more impressive opponents. Though one thing that Seth and I wanted to talk about is Sasuke. We've been talking about this for various reasons over the past few days, and we actually think that Sasuke is a lot more impressive than people give him credit for in early Shippuden.
And it's the reason for this, right? And I really wanted to hammer this home. I almost wanted to just make a Sasuke video at one point, but I can go over it here too. It's just like, you know, when he destroys them, when they meet him after the bridge, Tsunade tells Sakura that Sasuke is so powerful, he has to be on roids, so he's like not natty, or he's using forbidden jutsu to amplify his stats. Like, that's the only way he can be that strong. Now, Naruto, before he meets Sasuke here, is fatigued to the point he's like falling over. He also fights Orochimaru twice. A lot of people don't know that. He actually fights Orochimaru again after Four Tails before meeting Sasuke, and Orochimaru actually spares him. So he has to fight while so fatigued he's falling over again against Orochimaru. So when he does fight Sasuke, he's nowhere near full power, right? And Sakura, she does get like a concussion. She gets basically one tap with a collateral from Kabuto's body, like flying into her.
Not to mention, it is Sasuke who she's fighting, so she's probably just like holding back subconsciously for a lot.
But even with that information, you know, you still see the characters think he would do that anyway. And the reason I say that is because Tsunade and probably Yamato and maybe Sai probably all tell, you know, their mission report after it's over, and they probably tell Tsunade what happened, and then Tsunade came to the conclusion, unlike his peers, he has to be unnatural. He has to be on roids, you know? And his peers, Naruto, Sakura, and Sai, even Sai would be able to do this. You have to remember, Sai is actually relative to like base Naruto and Sakura probably. But is that Sakura is able to...
How much do we get a stack? That's pretty good.
Named Sasori.
I've talked about this before. I am one of the...
I love that you don't take damage from squids if you have on a soul helmet. That is hilarious. I never knew that. I would have been wearing this before if I had known that. So I would have just worn the soul helmet. It would have looked goofy, but it would have been effective. I would be squid proof.
Daedra is monstrous. Again, we'll get into Daedra later, so just put a pin in that. But
Egg.
Sorcery has like instant kill poison, can control 100 puppets at the same time, has the third Kazekage puppet, has the Hiruko puppet that was able to completely decimate Kankuro, who's a Jonin, by the way. We can actually start there, because Kankuro is just concretely, blatantly Jonin level. He and Tamari are, it's him, Tamari, and Neji who are Jonin at the start of Shippuden, right?
Yeah.
So Sasori in like the first phase of his boss fight, just slams Kankuro. It's not close at all. Doesn't get pumped out of the Hiruko shell, so it's already established that he's massively above like Jonin level. And the big thing that I wanted to mention here is a statement that I caught the other day when looking at the data books. What it says specifically is he set his sights on the third Kazekage, who was called or hailed as something along those lines, the strongest shinobi. So this statement is a little bit iffy, but it's not inconsistent if we interpret it in the way that's the most charitable to Sasori. So hailed as the strongest shinobi would imply that other people saw the third Kazekage and thought this is the strongest ninja in the whole world right now. If the data book had said flat out that he was the strongest shinobi, this would be a dismissible statement because it would be contradicted by the fact that Pain was alive at this point in time, and that would be it, right? Like, obviously, Sasori's not stronger than Pain, and Sasori killed the third Kazekage, so you would either be able to dismiss the feat by saying that Sasori poisoned him or something, or say that the statement just doesn't make any sense. But the idea that he was hailed as the strongest shinobi means that people who didn't know about characters like Pain or Itachi, who were kind of operating in the shadows. I mean, Jiraiya didn't even know about the Civil War that was going on in the Hidden Rain.
Jiraiya didn't even know about Amaterasu.
Ow. Can I like...
Yeah, exactly. Like he had
Nice.
He apparently didn't even know about Amaterasu, didn't know about the Civil War going on in the Hidden Rain, didn't know that Hanzo died until he got in the Hidden Rain and interrogated one of the ninja there. So it's totally reasonable to assume that people just wouldn't know about Pain, which means that the next point of comparison would be Hiruzen. So the third Kazekage, if we take this statement super seriously, could have been stronger than Hiruzen about 10 years or so before Shippuden. And what's important about this is that Hiruzen explicitly says, like very, very explicitly says, if I was 10 years younger, I'd be able to beat you now. To Orochimaru when he's using the Reaper Death Seal trying to pull out his soul.
Orochimaru says it himself. He's like, you know, if you're 10 years younger, you would beat me. So
Yeah, it's Orochimaru who says it, not you. Right?
Yeah.
If we're to take this seriously, this would pretty firmly place Sasori above Orochimaru. Sakura wasn't able to beat him.
Nice. Good shit.
By Chio, and Sasori
We're just grinding eggs and ink sacks. That's like the whole point.
was able to do better against Sasori than she
That food that I ate was pretty good. I fucking love garlic so much.
yeah, right.
I need to harvest my crops soon too.
He is very strong. Even like that is sort of like more of the higher end way you can scale Sasori. Like, you know, there's and with a lot of Naruto characters, there's a lot of things like that for sure. You know, I mean, I've seen people debate Deidara versus Hashirama. You know?
I need to put a snow golem on top of this so I can target out fucking
But even without that, you know, Sasori
the fucking
is still
dumbass ender tards.
powerful.
I know how to make a snow golem too, if I'm not mistaken.
And as well as the fact he's able to have down Jinchuriki, he's above, you know, Kage level, pretty blatantly stronger than the third Kazekage, or could take him down. And he was like, hey, don't underestimate Gaara. And he never thought he could take down Gaara, so implying also at least a Kage level opponent.
Well, Chio also thought that he killed the fourth Kazekage guard's dad.
Yeah.
So he had to correct her. He was like, "Oh no, that was Orochimaru. The other two, those were me though."
Yeah, and Rasa, you know, he's rolling Shukaku all the time. This
Yeah.
gold release. Third and Sasori are apparently stronger than him. But, you know, where I was kind of getting with that is, it then depends, like, do you think, you know, Sasori is going all out? And, you know, and it's like, you would say so, right? Because he's monologuing, you know, in his head, I'm going to kill him. Wow, that was impressive. She could actually dodge that. You know, and the data book's like, the data book's crediting Sakura dodging it due to, like, Tsunade training, right? But the other way you can kind of interpret it is maybe there's like a little bit of subconscious suppression from Sasori, but Sasori also still thinks that it might be possible that Sakura and them are powerful enough to take down Orochimaru.
Yeah, that's another thing that kind of supports him being above Orochimaru. He thinks that them being able to fight him means that they'd be able to go to Tenchi Bridge and kill Kabuto and Orochimaru.
Right. So another way you can maybe look at it is based on what the Akatsuki knew of Orochimaru, a long time ago, and then based on what Itachi's told them, which is probably accurate, by the way, and many other characters know about him, like Kisame. Kisame literally power scales himself below Orochimaru, by the way. Is that maybe
I'm gonna have so many mysterious glands before this is over. It's gonna be vile. Why did I put that in there? Look at that shit. Looting is so broken, dude. Holy shit.
are stronger than them. But back in the day, Sasori would have been able to beat them or something if he was as strong as he is now. That was just like 8 different ways you could scale Sasori. So you guys kind of see where we're going.
Yeah, that's why this fight is so complicated.
Yeah, now imagine Pain versus Itachi, right? But where we're getting with that is if you scale it charitably for Sasuke. Sasuke is roided out compared to Sakura, who could avoid this like old school Sonics level, attacks. And even the data book kind of supports, I don't like data book stats, but it does give Sasori a 34.5, pretty high. It says he can output more power with his puppets. And the Sonin are 35. So it's like
Are we good?
really.
I think we're good. I need to quickly harvest.
Sasuke in base form is roided out. I don't know if Tsunade or Yamato or Sakura, because I'm sure Naruto didn't have to.
Okay.
I don't even know if she knows about First Mark II either. Like if she knows like the full scope of what it might be able to do. Maybe she heard it from, say, like Shikamaru when they're on the retrieval, but they might not actually know the full scope of Sasuke's, in comparison, which is even stronger. So their assessment of him being like steroid level might actually be a low ball as well. And then you have crazy data book statements like he is he's stronger than any Akatsuki member. It's like that's a crazy statement. But the way I interpreted that as possibly consistent, this is once again.
That looks so beautiful. Look at how many beacons there are.
Sasuke Curse Mark II through a fireball jutsu, and he, Itachi or Obito try to throw their own. Curse Mark II Sasuke is to be stronger or something. Not necessarily that he has stronger jutsu, like he's not stronger than Amaterasu, or he wouldn't be able to necessarily beat Obito in speed or whatever. Maybe the Kirin is even stronger than anything. But it kind of depends on a few factors. But then you have fight Deidara, and what was it? It was Suigetsu who's like, why did you struggle with Deidara? Like, didn't you beat Orochimaru? And then we kind of get into this weird territory where like Orochimaru kind of gets like a Beerus treatment, where he gets kind of upscaled. But it gets crazy, and me and Swag will tell you why this like Beerus Orochimaru stuff gets really crazy.
Should I do like 3 at a time, maybe? That's not a bad idea.
And so he fights Deidara or whatever, and then he fights, Itachi after that, and it's like
We'll do all of our carrots
Itachi now, like,
and 2 rounds of potatoes. Wait, do I have carrot seeds?
At the start of
Ooh.
he's like,
We'll get 3 stacks of carrot seeds after we're done with that.
strong enough to fight Itachi, but now he's doing it alone. So it's like, does he think he's stronger than Orochimaru or them put together? And Swag brought up a decent point. Maybe he thought he'd have to take on Kisame and Orochimaru at the same time. So maybe they thought they'd lose like a 2v2 or something, or they'd be like a 2v1. And then he's like, oh, now that
Actually, I need to turn these into seeds. Hold up.
Which, whatever. But then the 5 Kage Summit comes around after Killer B, and they say Sage Naruto is way stronger than Sasuke. And it's like okay. So now it started like Sasuke's scaling gets like a little bit weird. And then after he fights Sage Kabuto,
We just found this before the video.
Yeah.
This statement is so crazy. Okay, Sasuke says, we just now surpassed our mentors, okay? Right? And he's obviously talking about Orochimaru. And then would they get Orochimaru out of Anko's curse mark? Orochimaru says he's not interested in the war, just in stealing Sasuke's body, and Suigetsu's like, see man, I told you we shouldn't have let Orochimaru out. And then Orochimaru says, well, I don't think I'm strong enough to steal Sasuke's body anyway. And Suigetsu thinks to himself, I wonder about that. Like,
yeah. And it's kind of nuts. And you have to remember Orochimaru and Jiraiya are equals in part 1. And part 1 is Orochimaru's actual prime. So like, yeah. Now Orochimaru does get stronger in the like war arc, I guess. But this is kind of based on Suigetsu's memories. And this is actually before Orochimaru gets his arm powers back as well. So part 1, Orochimaru is stronger, he's relative to Jiraiya. And then you have Pain gets hit by a smoke bomb from Sage Jiraiya. And while not looking, you know, he does the whole thing where he like blocks Jiraiya's punch. But have you guys ever actually thought about that? Pain, while not even looking, caught his punch. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe he's like, he has the reaction. Other Pain is helping him see that. But do you guys understand what that actually means to just catch a Sage mode punch? Remember, this guy is now stronger than Orochimaru in part 1. Unless Orochimaru is also probably in his equivocal Hydra form or something like that. He just catches it. He just caught it without flinching. One arm. And then you see Sage Naruto pick a way stronger Pain. Endo Pain with more Nagato, you know, concentration. Pain, while blocking it, racing with his whole body, gets sent launched across the crater while fully on guard, basically. So now Sage Naruto in Pain.
We'll grow the other
on a
carrots.
different level than like Sasuke, Orochimaru, and all those guys.
And then what we get from that, we'll go ahead and replant.
Think, okay, well now Pain is way stronger than Itachi. Like there's just absolutely no way, because based on Itachi's piece, he only fights this like kind of inferior Sasuke almost. And these Sage mode characters, maybe Shukaku was right. Like, maybe no one really could get involved in that battle. You know what I mean? Like maybe Sage Naruto really wasn't that crazy. Then it kind of gets into some different territory where you kind of have to think about it like, do you really think, you know, Sasuke would not be able to handle Kakuzu like Kakashi did, or handle, you know, Pain in a similar way that Kakashi could? You know what I mean? And then we kind of get to that territory where it seems as though, even though Sage Naruto is probably a lot stronger, that Sasuke is still at the level where he could still fight the Pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we could talk
Sasuke would probably come up short against Pain if you go and compare the two at the same time. Naruto and Sasuke, that is.
Tendo Pain and the Asura Pain later shows up. And he does pretty well. He actually almost destroys Tendo, albeit with some help from Choji and Chozo. Sasuke is way stronger than Kakashi. Like, this is just a fact.
Maybe in base.
Yeah, possibly in base. Well, because Yamato and Kakashi are supposed to be, like, sort of relative, and Yamato's just getting dismissed by base pre-absorption Sasuke.
And Naruto does, you know, he thinks about that.
Yeah, he thinks about that base Sasuke, and he's just able to tell that Naruto's still trying to catch up to Sasuke. And at this point, Kakashi says that Naruto surpassed him. So there's like 2 layers, right? Like 2 degrees that Sasuke is stronger than Kakashi by in base. And then you have his at least bare minimum 10 times curse mark, and he'd probably actually be able to do pretty well against Tendo and Asura. So keep in mind, Tendo was holding back in that fight because he didn't want to kill Kakashi.
I always bring that up. I'm like, the second Tendo is like, I gotta kill you, he one-shots it basically. People always forget that. The second Tendo wanted to, he's like, bam. He just basically flicked him off.
I mean, he even says as much too. He's just like, oh, okay, you're too much trouble. I'll go get intel somewhere else, basically. And then he just kills Kakashi.
Even while suppressed with 6 other bodies fighting an entire village, he literally stabs Kakashi faster than anyone we've ever seen in the entire series ever. Like, there's no one ever tags Kakashi like that easily. He straight up stabs.
Not even Kakuzu.
Imagine that was that rod he stabbed. It was poison. Imagine that was a poisoned rod. Like, he would have instantly just killed Kakashi. Like, it would have been that simple. And people just don't realize that.
Well, so if you're like charitable to Kakashi and you just choose to ignore the fact that Pain was suppressed, maybe Sasuke would be able to beat him. But if you take that into account, like, it gets trickier, right? One thing we should establish though is that Itachi's fight with Sasuke is not real.
One thing about Itachi you gotta know, he is the sandbagger god. He legit never fights seriously. Even when he's in Edo, he has to hold back.
Yeah, he can't fight Kabuto at full power because he has to get him to release Edo Tensei.
And even when he's like sort of Edo controlled against Naruto, his Mangekyo isn't activated, and he's not able to kill them anyway. So it's like You never see Itachi ever fight full power. Ever. Not a single time.
He has never bloodlusted.
Because Itachi would kill everyone.
He just lets Orochimaru live. He doesn't even try to kill Orochimaru.
Yeah. The only time you arguably see him try is when he is having a he's in the middle of a heart attack and can't see, and he just one-shots Orochimaru in stage mode, basically. He basically one-shot stage Orochimaru, like, without trying. He just stabs him and steals him away. And that's the only thing he ever really does.
Just to like address it too before we get comments like, what are you talking about? Orochimaru doesn't have stage mode. So Orochimaru has his ultimate jutsu, the Hydra, is basically like his like ultimate form.
It's compared to the sage.
Yeah, exactly. So they would basically be equivalent in power. We can just assume, for the sake of simplicity, to like Jiraiya's stage.
At least equal to Sage Jiraiya. Yeah, if Sage Jiraiya was a thing in part 1, then that would be his Sage mode equivalent, is the Hydra Snake. So Itachi one-shots while having a heart attack and while blind. Okay? That's the only time he ever tries the whole series, and he is fatigued and can't use probably his full power even as Katana, right?
Well, there is one other time where he tries, and he also one-shots his opponent, who's Nagato.
Yeah, so, and you know, it's like even when he's like fighting the Chibaku Tensei, I don't want to get into Nagato versus Itachi, but even when he's like fighting the Chibaku Tensei, he still is not in his full Susanoo. So it's crazy to me, you know, like, so you never see it. So we have to base it off of like some statements, and we know a few things about Itachi, a few things. And I think one of the most important lines.
You know what? You could just chill there for a little bit, bud.
Is he actually an undercover, like, top new gen shinobi of all time? Like, you know, you have basically the top 3 shinobi of the generation, which are Obito, Itachi, and Nagato, basically. And is Itachi actually just number 1? Like, is he even stronger than Obito? Who Minato thinks, you know, like, hey, you should probably get some Nine-Tails chakra to fight that guy, you know? And Itachi might actually be. And in the novels, you know, before Itachi got sick, you know, Obito's like, maybe, you know, they kind of saw each other as rivals, implying there's at least somewhat a level of care around each other, which might imply, you know, a certain level of, like, shinobi-ness or something, you know, if you want to go there. That's novel, though. But I think an interesting statement is, you know, when Itachi plants Amaterasu inside of Sasuke to, you know, stop Obito from grooming him, basically. Obito has an internal monologue where he's like, yeah, if he actually knew about me, I'd be dead right now. He doesn't say it out loud. He says it to himself, his head. Meaning he thinks Itachi could actually hatch a plan to kill him if he knew about it. Which means I would say that his jutsu are at least strong enough to kill him, or his stats are high enough to kill him. You know what I mean?
The most charitable way that you can interpret this is just that Itachi would beat Obito in a fight if he knew about
what?
Kamui or Izanagi or whatever
Huh?
Obito was talking about. But I think Seth and I agree, the more
You can break this.
interpretation of it, like, or what I think makes more
That's
sense.
interesting.
Obito probably thinks that if Itachi had all of the intel about him, whether he was talking about Kamui or Izanagi, like whatever I really wish Kishimoto had shown what Obito actually did.
At least like a little flash or something.
Yeah, like just anything, but we don't know. So it's either Kamui or Izanagi. But if Itachi had known about that, he would have been able to concoct some sort of like plan or like, you know, like post-mortem, like whatever, like the thing he did to Sasuke where he like planted the Amaterasu, maybe he would have planted a second Amaterasu or like a third one, or he would have planted like Tsukuyomi. That's actually a good point. Maybe he would have planted Tsukuyomi in Sasuke's eye, and then he would have caught Obito and Tsukuyomi, and like Obito would have died. Like, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, Itachi would have come up with something. Like, if Conan can think of her 600 billion paper bomb plan, yeah, then Itachi should be able to do it as
And
well. Yeah.
the last line of scaling that makes I hate this line of scaling. I hate this Purist Orochimaru, like, I hate that Orochimaru might scale to, like, War Art character unironically. Like, it's so weird.
It would probably just have to be with the Kabuto ant. But,
Yeah, because, like, there's something that makes it even less, you know, inconsistent is that the data books actually say Sasuke never reaches or surpasses Itachi's level until EMS. You know, so it might be like low consistent, you know, and something else that might be crazy too is, you know, do we think that the Edo Tensei are heavily amping Itachi or not? Now that's like the fourth one. God, there's so many ways to talk about it. Now that's like the fourth line of scaling. Because if you go with that EMS interpretation and like the whole Orochimaru thing, then Itachi should be that level anyway. It would imply Itachi is War Arc level at full power anyway. We know that even Obito with just his Sharingan should also probably be able to fight those characters anyway. And with the Rinnegan, he's sort of like taking on the entire planet, basically, you know. So if Edo Itachi might not actually be that much crazy stronger than the real one, and Edo Nagato is sort of like similar to how Pain is anyway normally, and then you just say, you know, like KCM Naruto that fought them is just like fatigued or something, and so it's just Killer B is the only normal one. You might be able to kind of dissect Itachi versus Pain a little bit. That would get into like Edo Itachi versus Edo Nagato, which is an entire whole video on its own.
Extremely toxic.
Yeah. But that aside, you know, if you were just only taking 6 beats of the character, let's say that, you know, Itachi was sandbagging, but just a little bit.
Which is not true, but, you know, let's
Pretend he had to only sandbag twice with Sasuke, which some people actually think for some reason. Well, let's just say that Pain would annihilate him. Like, you know, Pain would absolutely annihilate Itachi.
video over, roll the outro.
yeah. But it's clearly more complicated than that. You know what I mean? So I guess from there, where do you think we should even go and just like compare their abilities?
Awesome.
Probably, yeah, like we should get into Jutsu, okay? So, if we assume that Itachi is not complete and like not relative to Sasuke, which he's not, because Obito insists this and has to like drill it into Sasuke's brain. And okay,
The data books do as well. So
yeah, the data books confirm this, and they are a non-biased source. But I want to stress that Obito is able to convince Sasuke, who goes into this conversation certain, absolutely positive that there is no way Itachi could be anything less than the most evil, awful scum of the earth that he just genuinely beats. Okay, like Sasuke literally has like a mental breakdown, just like can't process like all the stuff that Obito tells him. He does not want to believe this. And Obito just walks him through the fight, and he's just like, no, really think about it. Like, you're alive, right? And he convinces Sasuke that Itachi was holding back against him. And again, the data books confirm it, so he was, by like a lot. You know, Obito was just like, if Itachi wanted you dead, you'd be dead. Plain and simple. So Itachi was holding back substantially, significantly.
yeah, and it's I think another line of scaling. This is like scaling line 5. I just thought of, I guess, is if you think Sage Naruto and Mangekyo Sharingan 5 Kage Summit Sasuke would tie, which might be implied. Like, you know, when they clash, like Naruto and Sasuke are like, you know, we'll kill each other. If that's the case, and you know, Sasuke is more like rivaling Itachi by EMS, then Itachi probably plans Pain. You know what I mean? Like really hard. That's only if you think, you know, MS Sasuke and Sage Naruto would be like a draw. Because at the end of the day, while Pain wasn't at full power versus Sage Naruto was so powerful that Pain literally just could not damage him and would need at least, you know, Chibaku Tensei or, you know, to absorb his chakra or do something like that to kind of take him down.
Even that scaling is weird, though.
Of course, that's only if you accept that interpretation.
Yeah, because there's like a billion different interpretations of this.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So first of all, like Pain was weaker against both of his like big opponents that we saw him fight. Primarily against Naruto because he just blew up the whole village, something that Conan even advised him against doing because of how much it would weaken him. And also, he's trying not to kill Naruto. He has to make sure that he can't. Now, I don't think that that's as much of a factor here as it is when Sasuke's fighting Itachi or when Itachi's fighting Kabuto, because it doesn't seem like he really can kill Naruto. He would have been able to do it when he had Naruto, like, drilled down with the one Rinnegan rod and, like, immobilized. Like, at that point, Naruto was done. But aside from that, no. And also, like, he fought like 6 Tails, who's just like totally different from Sage Naruto and seems to be a lot stronger. The other thing though is that Sasuke, Six and I agree about this. I think Sasuke got stronger over the course of the 5 Kage Summit by like
Yeah,
a lot.
he
Like
did,
as his
he did.
Mangekyo was evolving and stuff, he was getting like tremendous, massively mega stronger.
Yeah, he got to the point that the Raikage was like hiding behind a wall, like they would
Yeah.
like mess with him. Like
Yeah,
so-
exactly. So, and well, no, another thing too is that Naruto says to Itachi, I'm stronger now than I was when I fought Pain. But then, like, the Raikage, who Sasuke was able to fight and almost kill, if not for Gaara's interference, and just like slapping KCM Naruto around at first. So it's just like, like you know, it's weird.
That gets into like a say Naruto versus KCM debate. But
Yeah.
I think that this line of interpretation actually goes into Itachi's favor because at least at the Itachi pain, because if I also remember this as well. You remember when a stronger Kakashi fights blinded Sasuke and his attack is so fast, he's like, if I didn't activate Kamui, I would have just instantly died. Yeah, apparently Itachi is stronger than that.
Yep.
And you've seen Kakashi versus Pain, you know what I mean? Which, you know, might also further the Itachi agenda. Now, I'm trying to offer, you know, different interpretations for winners. I'm not trying to say, like, because it's a very complex thought. I'm not trying to say absolutely.
Alright, well, that's all I can probably do for tonight.
Interpretation,
I'm tired, I'm going to bed. I'll see y'all later. Bye.
and a lot, if that's the case. He's basically
Wait.
borderline blitzing.
Yeah, we're good. It's funny that squids can't damage you if you have on soul armor. That's nice.
Not